Thanks for joining us once again. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Our focus today is on the trading activity of Tesla this past week and some anticipatory things going on for the following week. So, as you know, in the early part of the week, we had a situation happen where pre-market there was a press release that suggested that Tesla was actually going to cut production in China by 20%. The stock subsequently fell as much as $12 or $15 in the pre-market. Now, we just want to remind you, please take time to like and subscribe. Also join us on Patreon if you'd like to have some more ideas on investing and trading. So the company responded quickly to confirm the opposite, which was a 20% increase in production had occurred, and that things are actually going well in China. Now, the stock recovered a little bit, then it dipped back down, and then after a few days, we're sort of in good shape again. So I actually would say, for example, we're still remaining a bit down because around 195 is where it should be. We're in the early 180s right now. In general, Tesla, we're in a remaining somewhat in the down position because the latest catalyst is likely to be a smaller Fed raise. With these Fed raises drawing cash away from tech stocks big time, we now face the Fed as being the negative anticipated catalyst. Currently, there's a problem for traders. As you know, it turns out Tesla is the number one traded stock out there, particularly in the S&P. Most of the big trading targets are down a lot. That's Amazon, Google, Tesla, etc. Helping Tesla drop more is actually lucrative. The direction does not matter, just the ability to have the stock moving once more. Company news like production or earnings or new vehicles and orders are catalysts. False news stories can get that done as well. Tesla's stock challenge now is that more production in China helps, but those pair in comparison to growth in sales at Berlin or Austin, and so this has already been discounted. Barring a valid upgrade, we are kind of stuck in that 170 to 200 range until the production news hits on January 1 of 2023. China reopening post-COVID is a possible another catalyst, but it would be nice to see the reopening because now we'll have sales returning to sort of pre-COVID lockdown numbers rather than the numbers we've been seeing out of China that are kind of lower than expected despite above average production. So it seems as though what the Chinese are doing is trying to figure out a way to mostly maintain the lockdown, but at the same time open up enough to end the protests. And for a lot of Chinese who can't go to work and can't do anything, I think their concern is valid. So in general, I chose to address this issue of kind of this news / bot attack. As you know, what happens is when this false news comes out, the movement of the stock can actually be influenced to move in whichever direction the news that they threw out was. In this case, it was negative. So kind of what's happening is with all the artificial intelligence that's been built into the market, basically there's a process where once news like this hits, the bots will actually sell everything they can and then wait out, and then the managers will come back and look what the bots did in their sales process and then determine whether or not they should stay out, look at it as a buying opportunity because it was a false sort of drop in the stock price, or a combination of any of the above. Based on what we saw this week, it seems like a normal process where the large institutions kind of wait out for a few days what's going on and then they'll choose to come back in, taking advantage of short-term, fairly low prices to sort of get back into what is a pretty good stock. I'm further intrigued by sort of how people that are investing in EV have spread their money out. As you know, Elon did a thing this week where he talked about the fact that he didn't think Rivian and Lucid could stick around given that their costs are too high compared to how many vehicles are being produced, etc. I frankly don't have a good look at what their situation is. The one piece of data that I collected was the fact that Rivian is selling their vehicle for $82,000 a copy, but their costs are $150K. And when I heard that, clearly that's not sustainable long term, but it can take time to ramp up production properly. So just looking at a snapshot of what's happening in early sales is a little difficult because you're not amortizing your fixed costs over a large number of vehicles. I think that in the case of both Rivian and Lucid, they both have situations, I think, that make it easier for them to stay in business. Amazon is a big owner in one of those companies, and their ownership makes it kind of interesting because they have a certain volume of sales. I believe it's 100,000 vehicles that are sort of guaranteed, and they've begun delivering. So I think the market will look favorably on Rivian because, you know, they've got a large, well-heeled customer that's going to stick around. That customer owns a decent-sized portion of the company, so they have more of an incentive to help them along over time. And the vehicles seem to be working fine within the Amazon system. They just have to get to scale so they can stick around. In the case of Lucid, yes, there is a problem, obviously, with high costs, but it's difficult to understand why Lucid would have any problems because their biggest backer is the Saudi government. So I just think that if they're showing progress, just like in the Amazon case, you know, there's an incentive if customers are happy and sales are growing to, even if the sales are below expectations, to stick around because it'll eventually, you know, result in a good sales situation for them. I kind of agree with the high cost issue because one of the things Elon emphasized was the fact that he was really pushing to have Tesla drop below $100,000 a vehicle because that opens up huge numbers of buyers that are not available when you go above $100,000. And so Lucid floating in the 150 range, I think it makes it difficult for them to get and be viable long term. So in general, for this trade week coming up, obviously I see more recovery from what we had last week. I believe that there's actually some really good news on the horizon. It turns out that, you know, oil prices have now sort of roamed towards $70 a barrel, and the Europeans have set their price point at 60. So I believe this is actually huge news because what's actually going on right now is when we drop down to $60, if in fact we drop into $60 range over the next couple of 3 weeks, the inflation picture will improve dramatically and allow the Fed to sort of ease off because of how oil prices touch everything. Transportation entities, call it FedEx or UPS, or even let's say trucks that carry goods to a grocery store, are all affected by how high oil prices are. So as we have this little shift going on, I believe it sets up for, I think, really good news for the economy. So in general, on the trading front, I think that, you know, we get some recovery on the production numbers for Tesla. I don't think those are going to be dramatic because the numbers for the past couple of quarters have been below expectations for obvious reasons. And the long-term investors are patient and happy to stick around. Short-term investors aren't so happy. The other thing that's been going on, and I've been noting from a lot of potential investors, et cetera, or current investors in Tesla, is just the fact that, yes, the stock price is down, but the reason for that is there are a lot of seniors who had to stay in the stock market before that have decided to move into bonds and other fixed income entities that were reliable rather than staying in stocks that obviously took a 50% haircut. So no, Tesla's not in trouble. I think they're doing well, especially when you look at the impact of the inbound semi. And I think that particularly as the beta and the early signs of the Cybertruck starting to start to come in, I think we're going to see a nice run for Tesla, but it may take until mid-spring, heading for June, when we start seeing the beginning of the sale of this vehicle. So I'd say our trading situation is spread over a larger amount of time, and I think Tesla is in a great position, and the Fed's decisions is what's really shaping where Tesla and other big tech stocks are currently. But I just think that, Tesla, along with some of these others, are going to recover nicely because they've got good, solid businesses that are growing, and that growth generates yield for folks if they can be confident in what the Fed is going to do and what the markets are doing, which has been unpredictable. The other thing that I think is sneaking in on the back end is the fact that, Russia's given up a lot of territory, and they're getting bombed at a long distance, so that they're working hard to continue to create havoc. But the issue that's popping up right now is there are legitimate discussions of a settlement. And if that actually occurs, I think the markets and Tesla go bananas, because the uncertainty associated with all of that is actually sneaking over and really messing up the market. And things like oil prices, et cetera, will really move in directions that would really help the market be successful. At any rate, this is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thank you for taking time to join us. We now move on to our kind of health tip segment. So what I wanted to look at today is we actually had one of our advisors who's a kidney doctor, and he suggested that the way to look at food is to ask a question. Our body systems are 2,000 years old. So anything that people have come up with over the last 100 years that's brand new, your body will say, hey, this is really interesting. Why don't I just store that near your primary organs rather than digesting it? So things like fried foods, he suggests maximum once a week, because the body literally doesn't know what the substance is and will just store it. And that's sort of bad for your health in general. So again, the recommendation was no more than once a week fried foods. And I think it's a great idea and highly recommended. At any rate, have a great day for now. Tschüss, au revoir, lehitrot, khoda hafez, trazuche, ni hao ma, Chinese, konbanwa, Japanese. Have a great day. Bye for now. And thanks for joining us.